Hey everyone. I think we should get started. It's 4 minutes after 4. So I just want to say good afternoon and welcome to the first Western New York Women's Foundation 2023 Pathways to Progress Speaker Series, Know Your Worth. My name is Suzanne D'Amico and I'm the Director of Development at the Western New York Women's Foundation. I'm joined on today's webinar by our moderator, Siobhan Smith from Catapult, and our speakers, Arlene Caucus and Lauren Johnson from the UB Career Design Center. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. Before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about the Western New York Women's Foundation, for those of you who may not be familiar with our work. As an organization, we are committed to creating opportunities for each woman to learn, earn, lead, and thrive. We present this speaker series to educate and inspire our community to advance gender equity and move Western New York forward. I do have a few quick housekeeping notes for today's event. First, I'm going to ask that everyone write your name and organization in the chat so that we know who's on the call today. If you have any questions or comments, also please write them in the chat. Siobhan will be facilitating the questions afterwards. So I want to make sure that you put your questions in the chat. Arlene and Lauren have a very robust presentation for you, which will be followed by a discussion and time for questions. The full session is also being recorded and will be freely available online afterwards if you want to view it again or share it with your friends. We'll also be posting it on social media, the link to on our website and stuff. So we want as many folks to be able to hear this presentation as possible. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Siobhan Smith. Oh, I forgot to tell you one thing. Please leave your cameras on, but mute yourself while the presentation is happening. So now let me tell you a little bit about Siobhan. So Siobhan Smith is the co-president of Catapult Executive Consulting, where she works with executives to strategically move their companies forward by capitalizing on the most valuable resource of any organization, people. With over 30 years of organizational development executive experience, Siobhan has spearheaded progressive initiatives such as leadership development, global outreach, strategic succession planning, and culture alignment for a range of companies, including New Era Cap, Cascades Incorporated, Perry's Ice Cream, Graphic Controls, and First Niagara Financial Group. Siobhan is currently on the Western New York Women's Foundation board and has formerly been the chair of the board of directors for Buffalo's Trocaire College. She is on the board of Oshai Children's Hospital Foundation and UB's advisory board for its Center of Organizational Effectiveness. We are so pleased that you could be with us today, Siobhan. And how about a virtual round of applause for Siobhan? Okay. All right, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. It is my pleasure today to introduce the speakers for today's session. So Arlene Caucus. Arlene is a dear, dear friend of mine, and I'm honored to know her and be a friend for close to, I think it's like 15 years now, Arlene, and always a learning process. Arlene is a lifelong learner, a gardener, a rescuer of senior dogs, and a woman that loves her family. That just begins to describe Arlene. She's a lifelong resident of Western New York. She did have a brief stint in Cleveland and DC, but she's so passionate about this community and its potential. Arlene's career has included a 30-year career with the United Way, with the last 8 years serving as CEO and president. It went by fast, but 13 years at UB, leading the university's Career Design Center, teaching at Damon University in their master's program in innovation and leadership, and teaching in the Harvard Business Club series for nonprofit leaders in Western New York, which Suzanne will get the benefit of, and more recently completing her executive and leadership coaching certification, along with certification in the Hogan Assessment Instrument. And of course, Arlene has always been a natural coach. Arlene has an MSW from Case Western Reserve in Cleveland and an MBA from UB. Throughout her career, she's been actively engaged on board of directors and community initiatives. She currently serves as an emeriti board member for the Western New York Women's Foundation, as well as serving as board chair for Journeys End Refugee Services. As a mom of 4 women, a grandmother of 4, a dog mom of 1 senior rescue dog named Reese, Arlene is passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice. She is passionate about women and our potential to change the world. This passion prompted Arlene, while serving as president of the United Way, in concert with Gail Johnston, then president of the Community Foundation of Greater Buffalo, to initiate the 2 board support the Western New York Women's Fund, which then became what we now know as the Western New York Women's Foundation. Thank you, Arlene, for all you do, always. Lauren Johnson. I know. Lauren Johnson, another impressive woman. Lauren Johnson obtained her undergraduate degree from the College of William and Mary in English and Psychology, and her master in Education and Counseling from Harvard University. For the last 25 years, she has been working as a professional career counselor and coach. Currently, Lauren leads career education initiatives at the University of Buffalo Career Design Center. In addition, Lauren has worked as an international Myers-Briggs type indicator certification facilitator and has instructed graduate courses through University at Buffalo Graduate School of Education. Empowering women to advocate for the deserved compensation in all areas of their professional lives is an area of particular interest and focus for Lauren, and for that we thank you. Her spare time is just as impressive. Lauren sings with an international cappella group called the Buffalo Gateway Chorus, and has even been known to try stand-up comedy. So this hour will be filled with information and lots of fun. So lucky you for being present. We are so pleased that you could join us this afternoon, Lauren and Arlene. Take it away, please.
Great. Lauren, I know you are going to do the lion's share of the presentation. I just want to say it is an honor to be here with all of you. We are deeply, deeply committed to you getting something out of this. We don't have a lot of time to get into it deeply, but we are happy to be resources to you after today. So just want to say we probably won't answer all your questions. We'll do the very best we can, and we will be continuing resources if needed. So with that, Lauren, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for allowing us to come and have this conversation with you today. We're really hoping that we can talk with you a little bit about some different ideas about how to approach negotiation, but also to hear some of your concerns and questions so that we can dialogue a bit as women about this very important issue that we, I think, are all quite aware of. I think the first question I might want to throw out there is, do you know why March 14th has been designated as Equal Pay Day? How many of you, with a thumbs up or something, know why this day is actually designated as Equal Pay Day? So, what equal men have earned in 2022? That is why this particular time is selected. Okay, so if you had any doubt about the gender pay gap existing, that should tell you that it does indeed exist. And we are still trying to play catch up to receive the compensation that we deserve as women. Nicole, would you mind popping up the PowerPoint? So we're going to talk today about the power of negotiating and a little bit about why that's so important. Our goals for today really are to create an awareness regarding the gender pay gap. Nicole, you can go to third slide, that's great. We're going to create awareness regarding the gender pay gap. A lot of times I will hear people saying, well, the gender pay gap doesn't really exist. That is not correct. The gender pay gap is still something that we all need to be quite concerned about. Basically, how a gender pay gap is defined is the difference in men's and women's median earnings. Okay, so and we still have quite a gap that we need to overcome. Our second goal for today's session is that we'd like to introduce you to a negotiation method when it comes to working with employers, either if you're applying for a job or if you're currently in a position, but you would like to think about going to your supervisor to negotiate some advancement within the position that you already have. You can utilize this method to help you with that process. We also want to give an opportunity for you to ask key questions that you have, either from the information that we present or just anything that you're kind of wondering about or concerned about when you think about this particular issue. Second to last here is we'd like you to kind of think about what is your commitment to yourself regarding a future action after today's presentation. We all think about this, I think, when we apply for jobs, we think about it, but making the commitment to actually do something about it is extremely important. And it's important to all of us as women, as well as to you as an individual who is moving your career forward. We also want you to share with the Western New York Foundation what support you need after today. As Arlene mentioned, we're really going to only be able to scratch the surface of this issue today, but I know that the Western New York Foundation really wants you to move forward and to be a support to you in this process. Next slide, please. Thanks. So here's a few statistics that you may not know about, or you may. Women working full-time are paid about 83 cents for every dollar earned by a man. So the gender pay gap is alive and well. The gap in pay is even greater for women of color. From the moment that a woman graduates from college, most face a gender pay gap that widens as they age, so that over time, the pay gap becomes quite wide. And a lot of this does still happen because women are less likely to negotiate than men, although we have been making some strides in that area, I will say. Gen Z women were asked what a high starting salary meant to them. Interestingly, those women reported an average of $6.2 thousand lower than men that were asked the same question. So there seems to be a perception from women overall that an appropriate salary is less than what a man might ask for. So that can really have an impact when a woman is thinking about negotiating, because if they aren't very well prepared, they could well come out of that negotiation with less than they deserve. A 2020 Glassdoor survey found that 59% of American employees did not negotiate their salary. So that is an awful lot of people that do not ask the simple question about flexibility in what is being offered to them. Men tend to be about 3 times more successful at negotiating a raise than women. So there may be some skills that need to be learned from women in order to approach a negotiation with confidence. Research shows that men are still about 4 times as likely to negotiate pay, but that women are viewed more unfavorably when doing so. So no wonder, as women, we hesitate because we don't know what others might be thinking or how we might be perceived. This seems to be a common feeling that women have when negotiating, and there seems to be some evidence that suggests that there may be reasons for that. So next slide, please. So as a result, women can see lifetime losses. You know, when I'm working with young women here at the university, one of the questions that I will ask them when they are hesitating about approaching a negotiation, I'll ask them, well, what would you do with an extra $1 million if you had it? And that tends to really ring home for them, as they are thinking, really, I could lose $1 million? And that is actually the truth. It's really amazing from my perspective when working with young women, how often they will not even think about negotiating. And that is not a part of the process at all for them. In fact, I've met with many women who I've asked to share with me, well, the process. What was the process that you went through when you were accepting this offer? And you're going to be stunned by this, but I've had multiple women tell me that they did not even ask what the salary was before they accepted the position. This is problematic. We're really emphasizing how important it is to advocate for yourself and to go into your career at the highest possible level that you can as a starting point, because that starting point is the foundation for where you're going to build your career. You don't want to start at a place that does not represent your market value. And it's amazing to me how many women don't even think about it, but at the same time, don't even think about asking about their compensation package. When we talk about compensation today and compensation packages, it's really important to understand that we are speaking about more than just salary. Salary is incredibly important. However, it's also incredibly important that when you're going into a negotiation regarding money with an employer, or even an employer that you already work for, that you're really aware of what your total compensation package is. And that includes the benefits as well as the salary. In my experience working with college students, and particularly college women, it's never a thought to ask about anything other than salary. And understanding that your total compensation package is really what represents your total income tends to be a bit of a foreign concept for young women as they're coming out of college. But it's a very important concept, because the elements of your compensation package are also up for negotiation. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. But you can see on this slide, the lifetime losses for different populations are huge. So it's very important that we try to take control of what we can, and that is our individual approach to our own career and to being a self-advocate in those moments that we have that opportunity. Next slide, please. So there is some good news. All right, I'm going to go over a few. I feel like I've just been a real downer, but I'm going to be a little bit more up on this slide. So there have been some strides in trying to address systematic pay equity. And those strides have been made in order to increase the transparency of what employers are paying. If you have more understanding about what employers are actually going to pay for jobs, then certainly you have a leg up when you're going in to talk with them. Okay? It makes it, and I'm not suggesting that that means that you don't negotiate, but it does give you some foundational knowledge that a lot of us wouldn't have had before. So a couple of things that have happened and will be happening. As of January 2020, in New York, employers can no longer ask what you have earned in past positions. This is huge. This used to be something that women would ask me all the time. What if they ask me what I earned in my last job? You know, because they might be trying to get to a higher place. And the concern was, if they know that I was only paid $25,000, that they're going to offer me only a slight increase. Well, that is no longer going to be, hopefully, an issue in New York, as long as people obey the law, which is that they cannot ask you in interviews or on applications about your past salary. Also, as of September 17th of this year, New York's pay transparency laws go into effect. Okay? Pay transparency laws basically mean that private sector employees with more than 4 employees must list their salary compensation or a range for compensation in their job postings that are shared externally, like on job sites, things like that, or internally, if people are going to be going for promotions that are internal, those salary ranges are supposed to be made public. I think what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of ranges published, so that employers don't lock themselves in to, something that they didn't really intend, as well as they're trying to get the best candidates for the position too. So there may be a desire to share the range of flexibility that they have. So I think this is fantastic. This is really going to help us when it comes to negotiating and having a sense of where this employer thinks that people should be coming in. In addition, the law requires organizations to also include a job description in their postings if that job description exists. One of the reasons why this is important is because when we discuss on our next slide or two about the deals method of negotiation, that part of that is going to be looking at your market value, which is based on different positions that you're applying for. If you don't know what the position entails or what is in the job description, it's really difficult then for you to come up with that market value salary that aligns with the job description. So if the job descriptions are more publicly put out there for all of us, it's going to help with us being able to identify what salary ranges are going to be most appropriate. Another point, Arlene, did you want to address this last point about the Gen Z employees?
Yeah, so at the end of the presentation, we're going to give you some of the resources that we've looked at for some of these statistics. But obviously what you're seeing is good news. Legislation is coming forward and requiring more transparency. But generationally, there's also attitudinal changes that are occurring among the workforce. In particular, Gen Z, so these are employees who are 25 years or younger. This generation has demonstrated that they are very happy sharing with each other what each other is making. And so even without legislated change that says you've got to disclose, what's happening in workplaces is people are talking to each other, and just by virtue of this generational change in attitude of it's okay to talk to your friends about how much you make and see whether or not they're making comparable wages. It's occurring naturally because of the generational change. So there's going to be, I think, just an increasing level of information available to all of us, not only because we'll be required to receive it, but because attitudes are changing and people are talking to each other.
And one of the things that, we're going to be discussing with you about the negotiation process is how to determine your market value. And there are many ways that you can determine market value. And one of those ways is by talking to other people. And when people are unwilling to have those conversations about what they're currently making, it's kind of hard to figure out where you might fit into that. So I think that this is also good news as people are coming up through the workplace. There's going to be more opportunities to have conversations with women about where you are, where did you come in, are you willing to have conversations about that? Because you can look things up online, and we're going to give you lots of resources for doing that. But it's also helpful to check that information with real women, and that, I think, is going to become more possible even than it was in earlier generations. Nicole, would you mind launching my first poll? Nicole is going to be launching a poll for us, and I'd love it if each of you could provide a response. The poll says, please select the phrase below that best describes your salary negotiation experience. The first is, I've successfully negotiated my salary or benefits in the past. The second is, I've attempted to negotiate but was not successful. The third, I've thought about it but didn't know where to start. And the last, I've never even considered it. We'll give you a couple of moments to put in your response. Nicole, if you would put up the results of the poll, that would be wonderful. Okay. Look at our thumbs up on this group. So 55% of those of us in the presentation today have successfully negotiated salary or benefits. 36% have given it a try, but maybe we're not successful. Some wanted to, but didn't know where to start. And then no one in here has not considered it. So that is a real victory right there. I'm wondering if anyone would be willing to share a little bit about their experience with negotiating, what worked, or for those of you who tried, but maybe it wasn't successful, what might you try differently from your perspective? I'm wondering if anybody might be willing to share. You can also share in the chat if that's more comfortable. That would be totally fine as well. I remember the first time when I tried to negotiate salary, it was my second job when I graduated from college. My first job when I graduated from college was okay. And then a month in, they ran out of money and stopped paying for me. And I never got paychecks. And then it took 6 months before I said to them, what happened to the paychecks? I mean, so that was not a good beginning. The second job I had, I actually was able to do much better with that.
So Lauren, I see in the chat that one of the comments is, I tried, but they told me they didn't have any money.
Okay.
And we do have another one too, where a caveat was initially they did not get the desired salary, but a few months down the line, they received a bonus that then put them in the range that they wanted. And that's a common way to get around it sometimes.
Yes.
Thank you for participating.
So if an
sharing your story.
employer says to you, I don't have any money for you, what do you think could be a possible response for that?
You could ask them when you could follow up with them. Like when would be a better
Absolutely.
time?
Absolutely. You could say that. You could say, well, I really appreciate that. I'd like to continue this conversation. Could we meet again in 3 months? You could also, Arlene, go ahead. Looks like you wanted to say.
Well, I was just going to say, Lisa, thank you. I loved your answer. And here's what I'll just underscore. I always say to people, no today just means no today. No today doesn't mean no,
I
never.
love that.
No, never, 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 never. So no today means, okay, so when can I come back? Right? Not that you're going to go back every day of the week, right? But what's a reasonable time frame when we can have this conversation again? So thank you.
Also, I would say for those of you who are trying to go to current employers about money and raises and things like that, make sure that you are keeping your notebook where you are writing down your achievements, your accomplishments, the things that you can bring to the table that will warrant you getting an increase. I think sometimes we find ourselves in these positions and we haven't really thought about or reflected on the details of why we might have earned or deserve that increase. For me, I'm one of those people that kind of struggles with remembering the details sometime. I'll think, what happened last year? So if you're especially one of those people, it's very important that when something good happens and when you have a good accomplishment, that you are writing that down and you're creating your list of things that you think are great things that you've done. Hey, if nothing else, on a bad day, you look at your list and you say, I am amazing. So I think that that's really important for women. We can forget that sometimes, but it's also really good information for you to bring to the table in a negotiation. So you are prepared. Being prepared is essential. Okay, let's go into talking a little bit about what it means to negotiate. And we're going to provide you with a little bit of structure for how to think about negotiating, whether it's you've been offered a job or you're already working, and how you do that. So we're going to talk about, there's really 5 points here. One of those is discover. That's the D, obviously. The first thing is that you must know your value when you are approaching an employer. And knowing your value means that you understand what is the pay for this position across the board in your industry. Okay, now, of course, that varies based on location, based on other factors, size of company sometimes. But, you have to have that knowledge when you go in to talk with an employer. If you don't have that good understanding, then frankly, you might get eaten alive in that negotiation process. So you have to know yourself what it is that particular position deserves in the marketplace. If you have applied for a new job and you're in that process, it's very important to pick the time to do this effectively. So when you negotiate is typically after you have received a job offer. So you're not negotiating during a process of application or interviewing. Typically, you want to get the offer so that basically the ball comes back into your court. You have a lot more power at that point if you have an offer in hand. So it's very important to realize that you bring this up at a certain time. Now, sometimes employers will try to push you a little bit in the interview process, right? They'll say, well, what kind of money are you looking for? Give me a number. And if at all possible, you want to avoid giving a number in the interview process. And I know that might sound easier said than done. And sometimes it might be, but you certainly want to give it the old college try. So if someone pushes you and says, what kind of money are you looking for? I mean, there's several different things that you could say, but one of those might simply be, I'd really like to continue through the process and learn more about the position. And then, I'd have a better idea of what the compensation might look like. Secondly, you could say something like, I'm sure you would make me a fair offer based on my experience. That's not saying I'll take anything. That's saying I have great experience and it is my expectation that you're going to look at that and consider that when you provide me with an offer. Okay. So doing your research is extremely important. And that means, and you can say that you've done your research when you're negotiating. It's okay to say, based on my understanding of market value, this particular job seems to merit this range. Okay. And that's based on the work that you've done to figure that out. Siobhan, I see you unmuted. So I'm thinking maybe there might be something in the chat.
Yeah, there is a question. Thank you, Lauren. What if your position doesn't exist anywhere else and you have nothing to compare it to?
That's a good question. I'm not sure who asked that question, but it makes me want to ask you a lot of questions, answering that to answer that question effectively. Are there positions out there that are similar to your position?
I don't think so. So here's the stitch. I work very part-time, like 15 hours a week for my stepmother. It's in the evenings. She is a headhunter in New York City. Her company, I believe, is the only headhunting company that offers this follow-up counseling, which is what I do. So after someone's been placed, the staffing agencies will get paid after that person has been there successfully for 3 months. So my job is to help them transition into their new job and, make sure everything's going their way. And if it's not, help them manage how to get the results they're looking for or whatever it is. So as far as I know, this job doesn't exist anywhere else. But I want to make sure that I'm getting paid. I don't know if it's exactly executive coaching, because it's through a staffing agency, and they already have the job. So I'm just helping them transition and, make sure the job is the right fit.
So Terry, this is Arlene. I think what I would say to that is, because maybe you're not going to find that position title right in other staffing agencies. However, if you could break down the components of what it is you're doing and then search for those tasks or those competencies in position titles or job titles that do exist, and then begin to use those as comparables, because it's about the work you're doing and the competencies and skills you bring that are the basis for compensation, not necessarily the title and certainly not necessarily the company. So I don't know if that helps at all.
That does help. Okay, thank you.
Siobhan, did you want to comment as well?
Yeah, Jan Thurlby had mentioned that this job, she's had it similarly in the past. And so Jan, I'm not sure if you want to add to that in regards to how you did a similar job and it's called coaching, just anything to add to the conversation?
Sure. And I think Arlene did pretty much answer that, but it is coaching for which, there's lots of data that you can find out. And it sort of depends on is it executives? Is it mid-level managers? Is it technical people? But there is lots of data on what coaches, advisors, mentors charge. So do your research and you'll be able to come up with a number. I promise you.
Okay, thank you.
One thing I would also just quickly add to that is, one of the things that I've noticed is that one of the fastest growing titles that I see out there is coach. There's all different kinds of coaches. People are taking on that word for many different industries, and but if you're working with others to help them maximize themselves or a situation, that will fall into the coaching realm. And there definitely is data on that, and there's different kinds of coaches that are represented in some of the websites that we have given you at the end of this presentation as a starting point. If you still can't find information, I think Arlene and I would welcome you to reach out to us, and we can certainly try to help.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first thing is that you get armed with your research. You also want to establish your target number and your walkaway number. Okay, so your target salary is the salary that you would like to come out of your negotiation with. Okay, when you're researching these different salaries, you're going to see information that gives you a median, and then it will give you standard deviations. And so you're going to be establishing a target salary for yourself that is based on your own level of experience. And these websites will help you with that. Okay. So that you can put together a target salary that will fit you. Now, I'm going to say I highly recommend that you work with a range, okay? And that when you're negotiating with an employer around salary, that you use your target salary as pretty much the base of that negotiation. Now, a lot of people don't do it that way. They will present their target as, this is what I'm looking for. I would suggest to you that there's often more wiggle room than you think that there is. And that employers actually expect you to negotiate. And I can say this from my own experience working with Arlene in the Career Design Center. Sometimes I'm shocked that someone has not asked the simple question, do you have flexibility in your salary? And without asking that simple question, I've actually withheld potentially a little bit behind so that if they ask that, I might be able to work with them. If you don't ask, you do not receive. That is basically the way it's often going to work. So, it's very important that you're thinking about a target salary that gives you some wiggle room on the upper end. Another point I just want to make quickly about that is that, I'll have students come to me a lot and say, well, that doesn't fit my budget. Okay, my budget is this, so I need this. I'll be really blunt and say, that's not the employer's problem. The employer cannot make their decisions around money based on what you need in your budget. That does not relate to market value for a particular type of job. So if your budget is at a certain level, then you have to make some decisions about whether you really want that job, they're offering you market value, so you need to cut your expenses a little bit, or perhaps, you need to look for a different job that offers more money potentially. But it's really important to understand the relationship between budgeting and asking for fair market value for a specific position. Arlene, you want to add anything there?
No, other than to say I can't underscore enough, the cost of your lifestyle that you ideally want is not what you're talking to the employer about. You're talking about what you believe is the compensation for the position you will hold in the company. So they're really two separate issues, both very important, but one doesn't belong in this conversation.
Right. So the A is for ask, plan what you want to ask for, how you're going to ask for it, and when. So I'm going to say one of the most important things in this process is that you have practiced how you're going to ask, what you're going to say, and that what comes out of your mouth is not a surprise in that moment. I think when we get nervous, and let's just face it, I think a lot of us are going to get nervous when we ask about money. We all have reactions to nerves that are different from each other. I sometimes get like teary. You don't really want to get teary if you can help it in a negotiation process. So it is helpful for you to talk it through, to come up with what might the employer say when I ask for this. So it's not that you're hearing about that for the very first time and you're like, oh no, I didn't think about what I would say to that. You really want to maybe role play with a friend or role play with a mentor. You know, what mentor do you have that might help you walk through this conversation, and help you to, alter maybe the way that you say something to have it have the maximum impact. Most of us are not going to do that the first time it comes out of our mouth. It's going to be a little weaker than we want, and it might be a little more tentative than we want. And that, sort of leads to that L, which is lead and project confidence. When we are in a negotiation process, we can't look like we're apologizing when we are asking for adequate compensation. It's very important that we believe we know our worth, we've done our research, and we know how we're going to do that ask. Siobhan?
Yes, we have another question from Liz. How should you go about factoring the rising cost of living inflation when asking for a higher salary for a new position or raise? A very real factor nowadays.
It sure is a real factor. I think you still are going to have to stay within your market value for the position. However, one of the things that I have been encouraging students to do in more frequency is to have a discussion with the employer regarding how compensation will be increased over time and what will go into that into that decision from the employer. How do they decide how raises occur? And in that conversation, you can actually ask a question about that. You can say, given the cost of living increases and given the increase in inflation, how will you as an employer be responding to that for your employees? That is something that you can have a conversation about with an employer to see how they are considering making those adjustments. I know this feels super awkward when you think about raising these things and talking about them, but they're super important questions that can come up and should come up in those conversations. And even if an employer says, no, we can't give you money right now, you can fold those questions in and then ask for, well, when would we be able to revisit this? Can we talk about this again in 6 months and review what I'm currently doing, how I'm performing, and look at all the factors involved with compensation. Arlene?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that, Lauren, is, it's okay to say to an employer at a time like when you're negotiating, could you share with me what the practice policy or the timing, what's the time frame for salary reviews? How frequently? What are the considerations? What could I expect if I came to work for your company? What is the normal rhythm for this conversation? Just engage in a conversation and learn more about how they make the decisions, how frequently they make the decisions, what are the criteria that they consider. Do they do cost of living increases on a regular basis? It's all information that helps you determine, maybe the short-term gain is not what you're looking for, but you get information that says, hey, if I come with this company, I feel relatively confident they're going to help me grow over time.
Absolutely. Yes. Oh, I see Siobhan.
Yeah, we have another question from Alina. When who can approve your raise is not your direct supervisor that for sure knows your value, but your supervisor's supervisor. How do we approach that person or that scenario?
Well, I have some thoughts, but Arlene, I'm going to let you take that one.
Yeah, great question. So I think the first thing is for you to get a really clear sense of what is your sense of your supervisor acting as an active advocate and champion on your behalf. So empowering your supervisor to tell your story to their supervisor, and then really having a conversation about, can you talk to me a little bit about what more do you need from me in order for you to make the case, a convincing case, and act as my advocate, because I'm really looking to you to do that on my behalf. I'm presuming that the question is because you don't have access to this supervisor. And so what you want to make sure is that you're empowering the person who's going to speak on your behalf. And then you're really underscoring with them how much you're counting on them to do that for you.
Alana, did you want to elaborate more to that, to describe it a little bit more to Arlene?
Thank you. Thank you. This answer was really good. Yes, but I feel, I don't know, but I feel that sometimes when you don't hear of a person, it's a good sign, because I work in a big company. So usually people focus more on problems to solve, and people that do a good job we are not in their mouth all the time, because we're just doing a good job, so people don't listen. So I would like to see how I can show, yes, I don't have access to her like in every day, but how I can show my job to pass my supervisor. Like, I want her to hear from me like good things, and not when something happens and needs to be addressed. I don't know if I was clear about it.
No,
How can I show my work, my good work every day that I do? I don't want to be my good work be ignored, and then when something happens and needs to be addressed, because she addressed this, but I don't want to be that she hears from me only when there's something that she can help me with.
Got it. Lauren, do you have any other input beyond what I suggested?
I mean, I'm actually kind of in that position myself. So I think that part of it is asking your supervisor, how can I help you to communicate about my value? Because your supervisor, if you're a great employee, which I'm sure you are, your supervisor really values you and probably would love to help you, but they also may be overwhelmed, have their own issues, have their own problems to solve, etc. And if you can actually be the one to say to your supervisor, I would love to help to present this case to your supervisor. How can I do that in a way that you think might have a positive outcome? Maybe then, I mean, it kind of goes back to what I was saying about chronicling your own achievements too, so that you can present to your supervisor, look, these are some things that I've done, that I've accomplished, that I'm proud of, that have contributed to the productivity of our team. So sometimes it's not all, when you're talking to a supervisor, it's not all about you and what you want and even what you deserve. Sometimes it's about, can you make them see the value that you're bringing to them? Like, what has your work done to make the company or the organization run more smoothly, and show them that without you, there would be a negative impact. So, I would try to work with your supervisor to help them present that case above them to their supervisor. Engage them more in that process.
I would great add, Lauren. I would just add one more thing. If you're afforded the opportunity to raise your hand for some sort of an assignment that's going to give you visibility beyond your supervisor, raise your hand, right? Because sometimes by virtue of the structure, we become invisible to the people above us. However, probably in every organization, large, small, complex, not so complex, there are opportunities for people to simply raise their hand and say, I'd like to work on that. Raise your hand, create the opportunity for yourself to become more visible to the people who you do not report to directly, but who can influence your career.
Absolutely. I can't believe it. I'm looking at the clock and it's like 5 o'clock. This is nuts. How does it go by so fast? But I will say just a couple of other things about sort of the projecting confidence piece and the way that you present yourself when you are having these conversations. It's really easy to over talk in these situations, and it's really important to use silence and give them the space to respond. I think that when we're kind of nervous, or some of us at least, when we are a little uneasy, it's easy to take silence as a negative and then start filling in that space. And if you can present your case and then just kind of sit back and wait for a response, you're going to be in a better position to create your own response. Sometimes I think it's difficult because it's easy to take things personally, that the no is because I'm not doing a good job, or I didn't do that well, or our little bit of our imposter syndrome comes in this process. Like, do I really deserve this? You're talking and you're making a case for your raise, and there's a part of you in your little brain there that's saying, I don't know if I even deserve this. And we have to get past that as women, that we do deserve it. We offer a tremendous amount. And remember that this is not a personal conversation. This is a business conversation. This is a conversation that is extremely important for your own well-being. And we have to work, a lot of us, on taking out that sense of personalization to know that we're having a workplace conversation and prepare for it as such. And that means having our information, having our data, and doing the practice that is required to present ourselves effectively. And most of us, I'm sure there's one or two of you out there that would just be a star right off the bat, but I'll say most of us really need to put the time in to be confident about this type of conversation. And there's nothing wrong with us for that. It's not something we do every day, is go in and advocate for us, especially in terms of compensation. And we haven't really talked very much today about beyond salary, but Arlene, you want to talk about your the resource that we put at the end that I think is so important, and I know you do too.
Yeah, so I know we're short on time. We did give you several resource references, one of which I would strongly encourage you to take a look at. It's called 75 Things You Can Negotiate. And so here's the message. Money is only one part of it. And I'm going to underscore this, especially given what we've lived through in the last 2-3 years. I think we've all come to appreciate the beauty of some flexibility in our work schedules, and perhaps things that are non-monetary that actually make our lives balanced, happy, and successful. And so there are so many other things to talk to a prospective employer about in addition to money. So when we say know your worth and negotiate, we're saying negotiate the whole package. You're negotiating a relationship with an employer. It's more than just the money. And so I'm going to really, really encourage you to think more broadly. And that will be very personal, because for some of you, flexibility in what days of the week you go into the office is more important than others. You have to go through that kind of self evaluation yourself and determine what's most important and try to get it all in the package for yourself.
Absolutely. These resources really are very good. The first few resources will really help you with finding the value of and looking at the different salary calculators to help you see where the market value might be. You can see Paycheck City is going to help you to look at what your take home would be with different salaries, for example. So you can see what taxes are going to be taken out in different states. And so you know what your take home is going to be. These first four are really good websites for helping you start that process of looking at numbers. And then these next several websites are, and there's also a podcast in here that is really good at walking you through how to negotiate and some things to consider when you're going into that process. So I would really encourage you to take some time post this presentation to really dig in and see how these resources can support you.
And yes, we will send out the links so you have them all. I'll just point out the 15 rules for negotiating a job offer. This is a YouTube video that was done by a Harvard Business School professor. And I don't want to take the time to say, what do you think is the first point? But the first point, make sure they like you. Nobody's going to give you more, and you're not going to be able to negotiate if you haven't gotten them to the point that they really like you and really want you. So that's the first order of business, is sell them on you and what you have to offer, and then go through the rest.
Okay, thank you. I know we're out of time. And so Suzanne said that this would be sent out. Suzanne, I think you're going to close it.
I am. Thank you so much, Siobhan. So we definitely want to give a very heartfelt thank you to Arlene and Lauren for the terrific presentation and the discussion. I do have a couple things I'd like to say. Thank you to all of you who have joined us online. We hope that you have enjoyed the presentation. In the chat, Nicole is going to put a link, a little survey link for your feedback. And in there, you're going to have a question where you are able to put in there whether or not you would like us to reach back out to you to help you sort of practice what we've learned today. So we want to offer you resources just beyond this webinar where you can put some of these skills into practical use. This event is part of the Pathways to Progress series. We have 2 more events within this series throughout the year. So be sure to follow us on all of our social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn for the latest updates. Also, you can check out our website under Pathways to Progress, and we will be putting the other 2 series on there as we finalize the details. I want to definitely say thank you to Lauren and Arlene for bringing the presentation, and to Siobhan for moderating our Q&A. And thank you for all of us, to all of you for joining us. The Western New York Women's Foundation really wants to be a resource for women in this community. And it's really important that as women, we share this, we share the responsibility to help uplift each of us. And we know that when we put women in positions of leadership, it is better for everyone. So do not be afraid to know your worth and to ask for it and to go out there and get it. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us. We're really, really pleased with the turnout. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to Nicole, myself, Arlene, Lauren, Siobhan, any of us. We're happy to help. We want you to get what you deserve. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.